you know Adolf Hitler. You've never seen him like this before. Hitler's contemporaries, from his birth in Braunau to his death in the bunker, authentically flesh out the picture. Who was Hitler? Hitler neither finished school nor had any vocational training. He occasionally lived in homeless shelters or on the street. He refused to pursue a regular job. To this day, it seems inexplicable that he could come to power. Out of nowhere, Hitler became the Führer, leader of the German Reich, one of the most powerful men of the 20th century, starting an inferno that engulfed the world and brought death to millions of people. The nation worshipped him and followed him blindly into the abyss. But during his lifetime, he kept his origins and his life secret. No one should know how or who he was. Fascinating and oppressive accounts from companions, friends, and enemies, as well as the most extensive collection of archive material ever shown, much of it hitherto unpublished, reveal who Hitler was and how he could become what he was: a notorious liar and an unscrupulous murderer. Hitler's power is now unlimited. He is Chancellor and President for life and Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. He makes the laws, with Cabinet and Parliament having merely token functions. While portraying himself as a Chancellor of Peace, Hitler works secretly to build up Germany's military power. Young Germans are drilled in paramilitary organizations like the Hitler Youth. The people come to terms with the merciless dictatorship and the persecution of dissidents and minorities. The Nuremberg Race Laws are passed unanimously by the Reichstag at a special meeting convened at a party rally. After the return of the Saarland to Germany by plebiscite and in violation of the Versailles Treaty, the remilitarization of the Rhineland, the world worries about whether Hitler will make further territorial claims.
Speech in Munich, March the 14th, 1936. With the confidence of a sleepwalker, I am following the path marked out by destiny for me. Adolf Hitler.
I once said to him that the people still stood behind him. But if the corruption, the suppression of free speech, and the silencing of any type of criticism continued, one day the majority of people would refuse to follow. He replied,
"Ah, Wiedemann, I too am merely an instrument of fate and can't always act as I'd like."
And with that, he disappeared. Fritz Wiedemann, adjutant to Adolf Hitler.
Diary, Berlin, August the 1st, 1934. At lunchtime, we drove to the Halensee baths. People are friendly and peaceful. Even the young people seem well behaved here. The Berliner Zeitung newspaper published a bulletin at 8:30 this morning. Condition deteriorating, pulse weaker. So the end is near. This death does not come at a good time. Erich Ebermeier, writer.
Diary, Thursday, August the 2nd, 1934. Around 9 a.m., old Hindenburg fell asleep forever. The German people stand stricken at his deathbed. Hitler was there yesterday. Henriette Schneider, housekeeper, East Prussia.
At the first session of the cabinet following the death of the president, Hitler mentioned his last visit with emotion, which appeared to be genuine. He wanted him to pay particular attention to cultivating a friendship with England. Lutz Graf Schwerin von Kruse, Minister of Finance.
Even now, his death is too soon. Hitler surely won't allow anyone to be above him. The newspaper reports the following about the death of Hindenburg. The government has enacted the following law that is hereby announced. The office will be merged with that of the Chancellor, which means all authority of the President goes to the Führer and Chancellor Adolf Hitler. Karl Windschild, retired pastor. Wallenstedt, diary.
Diary, Friday, August the 3rd, 1934. Hindenburg is to be buried in Tannenberg. Henriette Schneider.
On the other hand, he repeatedly boasted in public that he was the only statesman without a bank account. He certainly didn't need one, as he had all the money of the party and the state at his command without any supervision. Fritz Wiedemann, until January 1939, personal adjutant to Adolf Hitler.
For Hitler, money and goods had no real meaning. They were vague concepts. Christa Schröder, Hitler's private secretary.
From the middle of the 1920s onwards, Hitler is in constant conflict with the tax authorities because his income as a speaker, the fees for the articles in the Völkischer and Illustrierte Beobachter newspapers, as well as the royalties from the sale of Mein Kampf, are either not properly taxed or not taxed at all. In October 1934, the Munich Tax Office calculates a liability of more than 405,000 Reichsmark. However, the Führer's problem will be solved almost immediately. The Reich Finance Ministry declares that Hitler is no longer obliged to pay taxes due to his constitutional position. As of 1934, Hitler no longer pays taxes. All outstanding taxes are also cancelled.
The tiresome consideration of financial issues was not his thing. Money was as natural as the air he breathed, and since he had never been forced to make any corrections thanks to the donations of his admirers, he assumed that others had a similarly unencumbered relationship to money. Ernst Hanfstaengl, head of the NSDAP Foreign Press Bureau.
The NSDAP Reich Press Office reports that as Reich Chancellor, the Führer does not receive a salary. He has renounced the remuneration of Reich Chancellor because he has his own income as a writer. Völkischer Beobachter newspaper, front page report, November the 7th, 1933.
As Reich Chancellor, Adolf Hitler is entitled to an annual salary of 29,100 Reichsmarks and an allowance of 18,000 marks. With his appointment as Chancellor, to gain positive publicity, Hitler waives his salary to the benefit of members of the SA and SS killed in action. However, the waiver is only for 1 year, and from 1934 onwards, Hitler receives, without public announcement, his salary along with the remuneration for the office of President, a further 157,000 Reichsmarks. Hitler maintains his publicly Spartan lifestyle in surroundings of not inconsiderable luxury. In addition to his private apartment in Munich, he also has a residence in the Alps on Obersalzberg. Unnoticed by the public, he builds up a fortune worth millions.
I don't have any stocks. I don't own shares in any company. I don't earn dividends. Adolf Hitler in the Krupp Works, Essen, March the 27th, 1936.
He had considerable financial free rein, as there were always considerable amounts on his account at the Franz Ehr publishing house. Heinz Linger, valet to Adolf Hitler.
Although for a head of state and public figure, the right to his own image is limited, Hitler makes sure he is compensated for the use of his likeness on stamps.
The last post minister came up with the idea of issuing stamps on national memorial days or other occasions. The considerable proceeds were transferred to a special fund, the Stamp Fund, which Hitler was free to use. Christa Schröder.
Regular postage stamps will in future bear the head of the Führer and be issued at all post and government offices. Official Journal of the Reichspost Ministry, announcement by the German Reichspost.
I myself once saw Reichspost Minister Ohne Sorge bring Hitler a check for 50 million. Heinrich Hoffmann, Reich Commissioner of Photography and friend of Adolf Hitler.
Hitler promises the heads of industry he will eliminate the trade unions. At the suggestion of Gustav Krupp von Bohlen und Halbach, industry shows its gratitude with the Adolf Hitler Fund from German industry, to which the companies pay a percentage of turnover. From the middle of 1933 onwards, up to 100 million Reichsmarks a year are transferred by German industry to Hitler, expressly for his personal and private use. By today's standards, Hitler would have been a billionaire.
Dispatch to the Danish Foreign Ministry, Berlin, August the 4th, 1934. A man has been given power that no human being alive has ever possessed before. All this power is conjoined in one single person, whose life up until now does not give us any reason to believe that the all-encompassing genius who could save Germany has been found. Herr of Zahle, Danish ambassador to Berlin.
He took over command of the German armed forces himself. For one last time, he transferred the command of the army to a general. Friedrich Hossbach, Major, Army Adjutant to Hitler.
Wehrmacht's oath of loyalty to Adolf Hitler. I swear by God this sacred oath that I shall render unconditional obedience to the leader of the German Reich and people, Adolf Hitler, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and that as a brave soldier, I shall at all times be prepared to give my life for this oath.
As in the days of the Kaiser, this oath does not commit the soldiers of the German army to the nation, but to the ruler himself, the Führer Adolf Hitler.
Diary, Wednesday, October the 17th, 1934. A law has been made. Hitler will remain the leader of the German people for life. Henrietta Schneider. Yesterday, we followed the ceremonies on Bückerberg on the radio. Once again, Hitler spoke excellently. All over the world, war, strikes, unrest. Here, profound peace. The people know this, or they would not celebrate him so much. Henrietta Schneider.
At the Harvest Festival, I saw Hitler at Bückerberg, near Hamelin, the old Pied Piper town. An immense mass of people surged up the hill. Grandstands had been put up at the foot and the summit. As the motorcade approached down on the plain, the Heils, shouted continuously by thousands upon thousands of voices, came rushing down the hillside like a hurricane. The road was flanked by peasant women from Bückerberg, from the Weserberg land, from Westphalia, all in traditional costume. They pushed forward to try and see him, to shake his hand and look into his blue eyes. He wore a beaming smile, and suddenly there he was in front of me. less than a metre away, looking directly at me for a second. He makes a strong impact, of that there is no doubt. Helmut Rossmann, Berlin correspondent for Swiss newspapers.
I had to think a lot about the comments of an ordinary middle-aged Berlin woman. She said she went to all the ceremonies and stood near the front rows where the Führer walked by. But she was never able to see him, because whenever he came near, her eyes filled with tears. Erich Kort, Department Head, Foreign Ministry.
It is not necessary in a totalitarian dictatorship to be loved by the people. It is enough to be feared, as Stalin was in Soviet Russia. But that Hitler was beloved by the German masses, there could be no doubt. Göring was next in their affection. To them, he was a hail fellow well met. It never seemed to concern them that he was also an unscrupulous killer. William Shirer, correspondent to the Universal News Service to Berlin, the nightmare years.
At the beginning of March 1935, Adolf Hitler travels to Bayreuth to attend the funeral of the district party leader of the Bavarian Ostmark, Hans Schemm, who died after a plane crash. Hitler uses such occasions to demonstrate his attachment to the party's old guard, which supplies almost all the district leaders and the influential Reich leaders of the NSDAP. Hitler does not attend the funeral, but most of the district leaders do. The center of power of the party, and since he became Chancellor, that of the German Reich, is wherever Adolf Hitler happens to be, and he is always on the move. He keeps official appointments, often in combination with public speeches, and meets local party officials, patrons, and protégés. Officially, Hitler has no private life. There is no distinction made between professional and private travel. The role of ministers is becoming increasingly insignificant in the system of unregulated coexistence of the Führer's rule and many old and new competing centers of power in the party and the state. Between June and December 1933, the cabinet meets 20 times, in 1935 12 times, and in 1937 6 times. The last cabinet meeting is held on February the 5th, 1938.
The magic formula, the Führer has ordered. The Führer wishes. The Führer accepts. The Führer forbids, or the Führer authorizes, became the completely new, legitimized method of authority to issue directives that nullified all existing forms of state life in Germany. Hans Frank, lawyer, Reich legal director.
When tensions and arguments arose between leading party members, Hitler stayed out of it. I often had the feeling that Hitler was amused by this infighting. Although he didn't acknowledge it, he obviously still wanted to prevent the emergence of a united front against his despotism. Christa Schröder.
He was strangely undecided in all these matters. On the outside, Hitler appeared as a really harsh dictator who reacted quickly and brutally. That he hesitated, even almost timidly avoided decisions, seems unbelievable. But it was like that. Albert Speer, the Kranzberg Protocol.
In the summer of 1935, Berlin looked like the cosmopolitan city it had been before 1933. A lot of traffic, advertising, hustle, tourists, and bustling activity. The expulsion of many artists and scientists was not readily apparent. Erich Honecker, communist official in the underground.
Nevertheless, I did not share the judgment of the foreign correspondents who thought that the Germans had light-heartedly resigned themselves to the loss of political freedom or become a single nation of Nazis. Willy Brandt, German-Norwegian refugee in exile in Sweden. Memoirs.
I come to Germany convinced that the overwhelming majority of the people don't find the political system of the Third Reich unjust or harmful. On the contrary, I'm convinced that many millions of people are profiting from Hitler's victory. Above all, unemployed people and everyone whose life is filled with national pride. I'm convinced that the system has indeed taken away certain moral values from people, but in its place has brought material advantages. Antoni Graf-Sobanski, Polish writer and essayist.
Diary, Tuesday, January the 15th, 1935. The whole day was taken up with the referendum in the Saarland. Big speeches by the Führer to the Saarlanders, announced by Goebbels. It is an uplifting feeling to experience this great era. Henrietta Schneider.
Nearly 91% of Saarlanders vote freely for the dictatorship in the territorial referendum. And at least 2/3 of earlier members of the two left-wing parties also support the return to Germany.
The majority voted for reunification with the Reich, although since 1933, this Reich had been the Third Reich of the Hitler fascists. Erich Honecker, From My Life.
Gdansk is loosely affiliated with the Republic of Poland as a free city and over 97% inhabited by a German-speaking population. As early as November the 16th, 1933, the NSDAP achieved more than 50% in parliamentary elections. On April the 7th, 1935, more than 59%. Under the supervision of the League of Nations, the elections are free. Outside the territory of the Reich, however, under the supervision of the international community, the overwhelming majority of Germans vote National Socialist, as in 1935 in the Saar area, and in both that year and in 1938 in the semi-autonomous Lithuanian district of Memel.
January the 16th, 1935. I have frequently stated that after the return of the Tsar to Germany, I will make no further territorial demands on France. In historical terms, this is a very difficult thing to renounce, as I am now doing in the name of the German nation. Adolf Hitler.
There will be no more territorial demands on France. But will he someday use weapons to take what he wants? Erich Ebermeier, writer, diary.
Diary, Sunday, March the 16th, 1935. In the evening, we heard a proclamation to the German people by Dr. Goebbels. In answer to the adoption of 2-year military service in France, Hitler has introduced compulsory military service in Germany. Jubilation in Berlin. Henrietta Schneider.
On bicycles, a company of fusiliers of the motorized infantry join maneuvers in Pottenstein, Bavaria, a portent of the kind of warfare that the German army is currently developing for the technology fan Hitler. The war of movement, which in motorized form, Europe will come to know as Blitzkrieg. Hitler is still concealing Germany's rearmament, which contravenes the Versailles Peace Treaty. The Fusiliers' practice ammunition is not live, in contrast to the stick grenades thrown in Franconian Switzerland.
Objective facts also include a number of political acts which, in contrast to the peace declarations, were directed against France. The most important of these acts were the withdrawal from the League of Nations on October the 14th, 1933, the reintroduction of military service on March the 16th, 1935, and the occupation of the Rhineland on March the 7th, 1936. During his regime, he gained a disdainful view of English power and gradually came to the point of no longer activating the former enemy as an ally, but intimidating it by an alternating sequence of friendliness and provocation. Conrad Hayden, Hitler's first biographer, 1936.
Go to breakfast with Lord Baldwin. He talked of Winston Churchill and said he lacked soul. I suggested that Winston is very sympathetic to misfortune in others. He answered, "Oh, I don't deny that Winston has a sentimental side, and what is more, he cannot really tell lies." Harold Nicholson, Member of Parliament, National Labour Party.
I can't lie for myself personally. I will never do that. But if I lie for my country, for Germany, then every lie is justified. Adolf Hitler to Erhard Milch, State Secretary, the Aviation Ministry.
The Führer says, as a private person, I would never break my word. As a politician for Germany, if necessary, 1,000 times. Walter Havel, Ambassador and SS Oberführer, representative of the Foreign Office with the Führer.
Interview with Ward Price, correspondent for the Daily Mail, January the 17th, 1935. I know the horrors of war. No gains can compensate for the losses it brings. I have seen that war is not the highest form of bliss, but the contrary. I have witnessed only the deepest suffering. Hence, I can quite frankly state, Germany will never break the peace of its own accord. Adolf Hitler.
In the evening, Hitler spoke in the Reichstag for over 2 hours about our desire for peace. Henriette Schneider.
Hitler's speech on disarmament in the Reichstag, May the 21st, 1935. Whoever lights the torch of war in Europe can wish for nothing but chaos. We, however, live in the firm conviction our times will see not the decline, but the renaissance of the West. It is our proud hope and our unshakable belief that Germany can make an imperishable contribution to this great work. Adolf Hitler.
Several times during his 2-hour-long oration, I found myself being carried away by his soaring words, until I would catch myself up and think, it's all false. William Shirer.
In 1937, the world still hopes to live in peace with Adolf Hitler's Germany. In 1935, Britain and Germany had agreed on a naval treaty. Germany is allowed to expand its navy to 35% of British strength. In August 1937, a naval review with German participation takes place in the English port of Portsmouth. Japanese and Italian warships also take part in the parade during the traditional Naval Week alongside Soviet, French and Canadian craft. On September the 17th, 1939, a German submarine will sink the Courageous, the first British aircraft carrier in the English Channel.
I saw a sign on the shop door, "Dogs and Jews not allowed." Edgar Reitwanger.
Diary. Sunday, September the 15th, 1935. On the radio tonight, they're announcing the outcome of today's resolutions in the Reichstag, that is to say, the laws that the NSDAP deputies have agreed on. the anti-Jewish laws. Marriage between Aryans and non-Aryans is forbidden. Karl Windschild, retired pastor.
Ich schlage nun dem Reichstag die Annahme der Gesetze vor, die Ihnen Parteigenosse Reichstagspräsident Göring verlesen wird. Hinter allen drei Gesetzen steht die Partei und mit ihr und hinter ihr die deutsche Nation. Artikel 1. Die Reichsfarben sind schwarz-weiß-rot. Artikel 2. Reichs- und Nationalflagge ist die Hakenkreuzflagge. Reichsbürger ist nur der Staatsangehörige deutschen oder artverwandten Blutes, der durch sein Verhalten beweist, dass er gewillt und geeignet ist, in Treue dem deutschen Volk und Reich zu dienen. Eheschließungen zwischen Juden und Staatsangehörigen deutschen oder artverwandten Blutes sind verboten. Unser Führer, im Retter und Schöpfer, die Freiheit! Die Freiheit! Die Freiheit!
It is absolutely normal that in seaside resorts and small towns, both in northern Germany and Bavaria, signs have been put up at the town limits forbidding non-Aryans from visiting. Herluftssaale.
Summer holiday anti-Semitism is the ironic term for the widespread exclusion of and discrimination against guests of Jewish descent and religion in German seaside resorts and spas that was already taking place before 1933. After the seizure of power, the National Socialists are able to connect directly with the anti-Jewish attitude of many resort managements and hoteliers. In 1935, Jewish tourists are completely excluded from the beaches of the German North and Baltic Seas. A corresponding decree from the Reich Ministry of the Interior in July 1937 is thus superfluous.
Diary, Berlin, December the 10th, 1935. The Genetic Health Act, or sterilization law, has been passed and envisages extensive examinations and tests for engaged couples before they get married. If things continue like this, we'll soon have a race of supermen. So far, there is no sign of this happening. Erich Ebermeier. Journal d'Allemagne, December the 24th, 1935. Christmas. The regime pales anew. The old Germany of piety and forests is created once again in every home. Once again, homely life is diffused by the fresh scent of pines. Silent night, oh holy night of coziness, thanks to which once again I feel the heartbeat of my old beloved Germania. Denita Rougemont, Swiss, lecturer in French.
Diary, Sunday, March the 7th, 1936. At 12 o'clock, the Führer gave the heralded speech. Hitler has occupied the demilitarized zone in the west. The Reichstag is dissolved. New elections are on March the 29th. Henrietta Schneider.
Hitler himself once declared in my presence, if the French had marched into Germany at that time, as I thought it possible in those 24 hours, then I would have had to withdraw again in shame and disgrace. Paul Otto Schmidt, Chief Interpreter at the Foreign Ministry, experiences.
Well, France has stood idly by. It is one of the biggest moral and intellectual collapses in its history. Paul Reynaud, conservative French politician, memoirs.
Diary, Monday, March the 30th, 1936. The election results were really good. 98.95%, a record. Lotte picked up Lore. Henrietta Schneider.
The party governor of Cologne had the right to hit 103% when adding up the yes votes. When the result became known in the Reich Chancellery in the late evening, it was greeted with laughter. Nothing more. Fritz Wiedemann, adjutant to Adolf Hitler.
Letter, April the 16th, 1936. My dear Führer, warm congratulations on your birthday. I wish you all the best. But just think, we're always having to write essays about you. This causes our love for you to suffer. And you are much too important for that. Please issue an order for our teachers to choose other topics. Sieg Heil, yours, Mary D., member of the Young Girls League, Bad Homburg.
A single line of SS men separated him from the crowd. I was in the first row. A good shot could have picked him off, but in 100 similar situations, these good shots never materialized. That's the most important thing that I know about Hitler. You can only fantasize about that. Denis de Rougemont.
Speech at the Nuremberg Party Rally 1936. Not every one of you can see me, and I cannot see every one of you, but I feel you, and you feel me. It is the belief in our nation that has made us little people great. You come here from your daily struggle for existence and our struggle for Germany in order to gain the feeling. Now we are together. We are with him, and he with us. And we are now Germany.
Adolf Hitler.
One day, a few boys from the Hitler Youth came to our school playground promoting their group. We thought they were chic. They wore smart shirts with ties, told us about sports events and contests. That really impressed me. We did gymnastics and exercises, and took part in scouting games. As a good gymnast, they made me into a type of demonstrator. A scout leader of the League of German Girls in the Hitler Youth. At the time, in 1934, I was proud, naturally. Beate Uhse, pilot.
The only big Nazi who actively did sports was Reinhard Heydrich. He rode, fenced, flew and sailed. He excelled in everything. He always looked impressive as an athlete and was always fair and popular. As soon as he put on his fencing gear, he was no longer head of the Gestapo. He was just an athlete. He actually did what Goering, Goebbels, Rosenberg and Lai only sanctimoniously described or demanded. Heinz Linger, valet to Adolf Hitler.
With his disdain for all things related to the body, sports, which at the time were becoming more popular, also meant very little to him. Somewhere I can remember reading how the young Hitler daringly swam across the Danube. I can't remember it myself. August Kubitschek, childhood friend.
Lunch was spent mostly telling jokes, which made the boss laugh heartily. He made some personal comments and remarked that he had once been a good skier, but that he had given it up as he came more and more into the public eye. As the Führer, one should only be active in areas one has a sound knowledge of, because otherwise the begrudgers would use any small mishap as an opportunity to spread slander. Henry Picker, Senior Executive Officer, Table Talk at the Volksschanzer Führer Headquarters.
Due to yesterday's snowfall, the Führer broached the subject of skiing. He scoffed at this healthy sport, which from a certain time of year onwards filled all the hospitals in Munich. Skiing had already caused so many injuries among members of the party leadership that he had reason to doubt the practical aspects of the sport. Werner Köppen, Adjutant to Reich Minister Alfred Rosenberg, report from the Volksschanzer Führer headquarters.
One noticeable symptom of Hitler's disturbed relationship with the environment was his terrible fear of water. The fact that Hitler couldn't swim and doggedly refused to learn, or at least visit a swimming pool, was undoubtedly due to his strange hydrophobia. Ernst Hanfstaengl.
He took daily baths. Yes, after every speech that he gave, he took a hot bath. In contrast, he didn't like bathing in public. Wilhelm Krause, personal assistant to Hitler from 1933 to 1939.
Hitler was particularly shy of being seen without clothes. He believed that if anyone saw him in a bathing suit and photographs were taken, he would lose the respect of the people. Heinrich Hoffmann, photographer.
He didn't want the old saying, "There is no such thing as a great man in the eyes of his personal servant," applied to him. Christa Schröder, Hitler's private secretary.
Later, Dr. Morell told me in confidence that Hitler was a difficult patient. You couldn't persuade him to allow an X-ray to be taken. When he gave him an injection, only the part of his body necessary was exposed to allow it. His servant, meanwhile, was ordered to leave the room. Heinrich Hoffmann.
The Germans have only taken to sport during the last 30 years. But they are keen and capable performers. They learned most of their sport from us. Football is the most popular game, but is played less vigorously than in Britain. Charging is regarded as rough play. Football is entirely amateur, and pools are unknown. There is no cricket, but plenty of athletics, some tennis, and a little golf. Boxing and wrestling are both popular spectacles, and the Germans go in for a good deal of cycle racing. Instructions for British servicemen in Germany, 1944.
In August 1936, the 11th Olympic Games of the modern era are held in Berlin.
Like millions of other Germans, I was also convinced after Hitler's rise to power that Adolf the Bounteous, as he was mockingly called, really would bring better times. At the Olympic Games in Berlin, he demonstrated Germany's sporting greatness to the world. I also allowed myself to be blinded, like millions of others. Beate Uhse.
Diary, July the 23rd, 1936. Our streets have changed for the better recently. The Stürmer newspaper display cases have been removed so that visitors to the Olympic Games do not feel offended by these agitating papers. Bella Fromm, German Jewish journalist.
In the summer, Hitler's fame reached a peak. Everyone wanted to get to know this extraordinary man or to have seen him. Paul Stellin, Air Force attaché in the French Embassy in Berlin.
Diary, Berlin, August the 6th, 1936. Mrs. Gussie Jannings invited me to her box at the Olympic Stadium today. The impression was really overwhelming, and would be foolish to deny it. There was a huge round of 100,000 people filled to the last seat. The Führer was already there with his entourage as we took our places. I could observe him well from the side, and frankly, he's more interesting to me than the athletes below on the field. The remarkable thing about Hitler is his cheerful calm, the confident composure of the fortunate and successful that now emanates from him. About 7 o'clock, he gets up. The Führer and Reich Chancellor is leaving the Olympic Stadium, booms from the loudspeakers. Everyone rises to give the Nazi salute. Hitler gives brief thanks. Erich Ebermeier.
Diary, August the 15th, 1936. The lack of sportsmanship from the first man of Germany makes an unpleasant impression. He acted like an insane person, jumping up from his seat and screaming in triumph when the swastika flag was raised, or when the Japanese or Finns won medals. The winners from other countries left him cold. It even seemed he was insulted by their victories over the Nordic competitors. Bella Fromm.
Hans Frank remembers Hitler being highly charged and following the Olympics with passionate interest. In the end, the German team wins 33 gold, 26 silver and 30 bronze medals, first place in the national standings ahead of the Americans.
These Olympics are a great breakthrough. You can be proud of Germany again. The top country in sports. It's wonderful. Josef Goebbels, Propaganda Minister, Diary.
Report to the Direction Politique et Commerciale Europe, Berlin, August the 18th, 1936. Marked by many German victories, the Olympic Games brought about an extraordinary glorification of national sentiment, and at the same time strengthened the country's admiration of and bond with the Führer. André-François Poncet, French ambassador to Berlin.
The Polish ambassador, Józef Lipski, said, "We need to guard against the people that organizes itself this way. A mobilization in Germany will go just as smoothly." The word went around. Scarcely were the last guests gone when Berlin returned to its old ways. The Stürmer newspapers were hanging in the kiosks again. Max Schmeling, heavyweight boxer.
Windhoek, the largest city in former German Southwest Africa, in a colour film of the Reich Colonial League. Since 1920, the former German colony has been governed by the Union of South Africa, mandated by the League of Nations. The overwhelming majority of the approximately 20,000 inhabitants of German origin sympathise with National Socialism and make this clear before the outbreak of war. With the end of the Olympic Games, Hitler's Germany has gained considerable prestige in the world. The NSDAP gathers its party members living outside the German Reich in a special organisation, the NSDAP Overseas Organisation, which early on is given the status of a 43rd party district. The Volksdeutsche, or ethnic Germans outside the Reich, are looked after by an ethnic league for German culture abroad, which is controlled by the party.
Diary, December the 24th, 1936. After we opened our presents, Lotte played the piano and the others sang. Then we listened to Hess deliver his message to Germans abroad. Henriette Schneider.
In dieser Gemeinschaft gedenken wir heute am Heiligen Abend ganz besonders herzlich all der Deutschen, die auf schweren Posten draußen für Deutschland stehen und ihre schwere Pflicht für Deutschland erfüllen. Und wir gedenken all derer, die in zäher Verbissenheit draußen zur neuen Fahne standen und stehen auch wenn eine böswillige oder unverständige Umwelt sie dafür hart anpackte. Das große, neu erstandene Deutschland wünscht all seinen Kindern draußen und in der Heimat ein inhaltsreiches und glückliches neues Jahr. Wir können das Fest der Deutschen nicht vorübergehen lassen, ohne in tiefster Dankbarkeit des Mannes zu gedenken, der das neue Deutschland, das Deutschland unserer Liebe, unserer Hoffnung und unseres Stolzes werden ließ. Des Mannes, der mit einer Hingabe sondergleichen über diesem Deutschland und über dem Wohl und Wehe seiner Kinder herinnen und draußen wacht, dessen Leben aufgeht in der Sorge um Deutschland.